Hey guys, in this episode we have Amos Archer. He's an appraiser here in the Burlington area. He's been in the business about 11 years, and we're going to get to know him a little bit and share some of his story. So stay tuned.
Hey, welcome back to The Buzz, Coffee and Real Estate. We have a super special guest today. This is Amos Archer. Good friend. I guess good friend might be a little bit ambitious here, okay? So we've known each other for years and worked professionally and actually went to the same school, but really getting to know him a little bit. And been an appraiser for 11 years, got a lot of experience in real estate. Really just wanted to pick his brain on what his perspective on the market, and really allow you guys to be able to see a real live appraiser, because we always get these reports back on the value of a home after the home is under contract. There's tons of pressure, there's tons of stress, everybody's trying to make sure all the parts and pieces work, and all of a sudden we get this very technical report back from some guy or gal that is really tough to put a face to. So anyway, I guess we'd just love to get to know you. Like, give us a little background, like who are you, where are you from, all that sort of thing.
So I grew up in the state of Kansas, and I say it's a great place to be from because there's nothing going on there. I moved here in 2009,
Okay.
and fell in love with North Carolina, but especially kind of the triad, triangle area. So I met my wife here in 2013, got married in 2014, and Burlington's been my home for quite a while now.
Yeah.
So I actually got into appraising. I was in essentially non-traditional education and realized that I needed to go back to school for a long time to actually be able to make it in that industry. I probably needed to get a master's or a doctorate if I wanted to stay in education.
Okay.
And that just didn't thrill me at the time.
Yeah.
That wouldn't thrill me either.
I guess I didn't want to study one specific topic for another 8 years to be able to teach on it.
Yeah.
So I was looking for a marketable skill.
Okay.
And that's really what brought me to appraising. A friend had become an appraiser or an appraiser trainee. And I was like, man, if I had that opportunity, I would jump at it. And he said, well, that's funny because we're looking for somebody else. So
wow.
Pretty much by accident, I kind of fell into it. And there's an initial period of education. I forget how many class hours that you have to take. Something like 100, I think.
That sounds about right. We're at like 90, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you have to do, at the time that I was a trainee, you had to do 2,500 hours of on-the-job training before you could graduate from being a trainee to being a certified residential appraiser. So that's
a lot more education than we have to go through.
That's exactly
they just
right.
throw us to the wolves.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. As an appraiser, you have to know your market. Mm-hmm. So that amount of training, while it was excessive, at the time it took 2 years bare minimum to do that. Okay. And I stretched my period as a trainee into 5. Because during that time, I met my wife.
Yep.
We dated. I didn't have any interest in studying. Yep. So I was just continuing to be a trainee, even though I had the hours.
Gotcha.
But you've got to know the market, and that's why there's such an emphasis on training. Now, they actually have reduced the needed amount of hours before you could get certified because they're having so much trouble regenerating appraisers. As people are kind of aging out of the field.
Yep.
The new ones are not coming on as fast. So they're trying to make that window of access easier.
Okay.
And I've got thoughts on it. I understand why they're doing it, but at the same time, I know that probably before I hit that threshold back 10 years ago, I probably didn't know enough to be an appraiser.
So they're probably letting people be appraisers that you would not have said you were ready.
I would not have said I was ready
at that number of hours.
But on the flip side, I think if you are with a firm or with another appraiser, once you get certified, that helps you continue to kind of develop post-certification.
Gotcha.
Gotcha. And then, the longer you're in it, the more you learn.
Sure.
But any appraiser that you encounter should be very familiar with the area, with the market, and that just takes time.
So what would you say is your area of expertise? Like, how far east-west. If you're based in the Burlington area, Alamance County, right? Kind of
Yep.
bread and butter. So as an appraiser, how far outside of that can you go and still, I mean, we're licensed anywhere in the state,
Correct.
but how far would you realistically, practically be able to say you could provide expert value?
So it really kind of depends on the tools that you have access to.
Okay.
And where you have trained. So when I was training, I was with a firm that they covered essentially from the Virginia line down to the South Carolina line.
Whoa.
And they covered all the way over here towards, I think, Johnson County
Okay.
was the farthest
Okay.
that they would go east.
Okay.
And then...
Which is on the other side of Raleigh.
Correct.
Yep.
Then whatever county Mount Airy is in, they would
Okay.
go that far west.
Okay.
I personally trained in Charlotte. I trained in Raleigh.
Okay.
I did not enjoy those drives. And then when I left that firm and came on with the firm that I'm with now, they just focused on Alamance County, Orange County, Guilford County.
Okay.
And I liked that a lot better.
Okay.
I know Chatham County pretty well.
Okay.
So I've maintained some business in Chatham.
Gotcha.
But honestly, if I get an assignment in Bear Creek, that means I have to drive an hour to get there. I've just gotten used to how cushy it is to
Yeah.
be in Alamance County.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I really just enjoy doing that kind of corridor that's up and down I-85.
Okay. So that central kind of 85-40 corridor right in that zone.
I do work in Caswell County some,
Okay.
Person County some, but my primary coverage is just those three counties.
Gotcha. So just so we kind of understand, you get most of your business from a real estate agent gets a house under contract, the bank has a loan,
Correct.
and then they're going to send that to an appraiser, and so help me really understand here, because something changed back in the Great Recession.
Correct.
I think we used to have realtors or banks or both that could sort of
Finagle.
pick their appraiser, the one that gave them the answer they wanted to hear.
Yeah.
And all of that changed.
They could get the one that gave them the answer they wanted, or more likely that would turn the report either the fastest or the cheapest.
Okay. Okay.
So they still major on fast and cheap,
I'm sure.
but now what was mandated after, I think it was the Dodd-Frank Act in 08 or 09, something like that.
In the aftermath.
In the aftermath,
Yeah.
appraisers got a lot of the blame, rightly or wrongly. Lenders were saying, hey, you shouldn't have approved these homes. Well, maybe they shouldn't have made the loan. Who knows?
Right.
But they said, okay, we want to make sure that a lender is not just calling you and saying, hey, buddy, I
Wink,
need
wink.
this. Yeah. And you know, ideally that wouldn't happen, but we don't live in an ideal world.
Oh, yeah.
So
Sure.
It did. A lot.
it probably did.
Yeah.
So you were getting a lot of those Pentecostal handshakes? Is that what you're saying?
I personally was not. I came along later. But so the system we have now is all I've known. But now that created a system called where they developed AMCs, which are appraisal management companies.
Okay.
Those are supposed to be independent firms that banks can contract with.
Okay.
The AMCs then get a roster of appraisers that are on their list.
Okay.
Each one, I think, has a little different standard for what that appraiser has to do to get on their list.
Okay.
But usually you're providing some sample reports for them to review. They're looking at your experience, the region that you cover, and then if they have a need of more appraisers.
Gotcha.
So, like right now with the lending industry being kind of low, they're not adding appraisers to their list. They've kind of got their little list of people. They don't want any more because they don't have a lot of volume.
Gotcha.
But what happens to me, the first time that I see that I've got an appraisal order, I get an email or a phone call, but usually an email from an AMC saying, here's a property, here's what we're willing to pay you, this is when we want it by, can you do that? And I say yes or no. If it's complex, I quote a higher fee, maybe push out the due date.
You're actually negotiating those terms with the AMC?
Yes,
Okay.
a little bit.
Okay. Okay.
Now in this industry, pretty much whatever they send me, I will take.
Gotcha.
And I won't haggle. But then, 2 years ago when it was completely just crazy, If it was complex in any way, I would say, hey, look, you got to give me more time at least.
You had more to push back on at that point.
Yeah. Anyway, so I get that order. Once it's accepted, I contact either the homeowner or the listing agent, set up a time to go look at the property. That's the first contact that I have with it, and then I'm required to analyze the contract, so that's usually provided.
Gotcha.
But otherwise, my inspection is really my first touch point for getting details about the property beyond what I can see in the tax record.
Okay.
So question there, you mentioned inspection, which I know for us is a no word for an appraiser, but I would ask that question is like, what is it that, I know you guys have certain guidelines, certain things that you have to do, but what are those things that like you're looking for? You're like, hey, I look in this thing, I look in that thing, or this is a no-no, or this is a big red flag.
Inspection itself is a loaded word. Supposedly, we're supposed to call it an observation.
Sure.
Because that's what I'm doing. I'm looking at exposed surfaces.
Gotcha.
I'm not, unless we're talking FHA, VA, or USDA, I'm not looking in crawl spaces. I'm not going in attics. For those special types of appraisals, I at least have to stick my head and shoulders in the attic and crawl space.
Gotcha.
But even then, frankly, I'm not going to go dig around if it's a hard-to-reach spot. That's what your home inspector's for.
Sure.
What I'm really kind of operating as is if you brought in your average buyer in this market and they looked at this property based on what they could see and based on the information that they could readily find through the MLS,
Sure.
What would they pay for this property? So exposed surfaces, and then, so with those criteria, I'm not necessarily, going to be looking for a certain thing so much as I'm just reporting on everything that I see and then trying to find something that is similar in as many ways as possible.
Gotcha.
And then I make adjustments for differences.
Gotcha.
And that would be more like a conventional style loan. So when you step into your government loans, I know there's probably, that's a hornet's nest of questions, but like, are there certain things, I know peel and paint's a big one for us, we've run into that, but are there other things that we would need to be aware of? Because, I mean, I know for agents in general, we tend to deter from those three types of loans because we're like, you have no idea what they're going to come at me with. So is there anything
For
that
good
would
reason.
be?
Yeah. The peeling paint's a big one. And honestly, that should, like where that really becomes an issue is for homes built before 1978.
Gotcha.
Because that's when lead paint is
Gotcha.
theoretically still in play.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So if it's built before 1978 and it has chipping, peeling paint, then you've got a health and safety issue.
Gotcha.
So that's like the big one that I run into with FHA. But some of the ones that people don't think about, we have to be able to open windows. They have to be able to stay open. And I don't have to actually open every single window in the house, but I do have to test a random sampling.
Gotcha.
So then if in my random sampling,
It ends up being that window.
that window doesn't open or I open it and it immediately falls down, that's got to be fixed. And when you're dealing with an older home, that gets real expensive real quick to replace that window.
Yeah.
Sure.
The thing that I fail the most FHA appraisals or USDA appraisals on is actually stuff in crawl spaces.
Okay.
Really?
That's a specific requirement that FHA has that they call it debris. The crawl space must be full of debris. What is debris? Anything.
Wow.
As long as it's not a piece of equipment,
Okay.
it should not be there.
Oh, okay.
Your
Good to know.
crawl space cover counts as something that should be
Like
there.
plastic or something.
Yeah. But if you've got your old paint cans, the other day it was pool noodles. Anything in there is considered debris. I've seen walk-in crawl spaces where people have their kids' clothes stored or lawn equipment. None of that can be in there.
Gotcha.
Easiest way to skirt that, I've watched a homeowner physically take everything out and set it right next to their crawl space. I took my picture and said there's nothing in the crawl space. And when I left, I knew everything was
It's going right back in there. Yeah.
But that's a specific FHA requirement.
Do you
Any
have to take a
standing-
picture?
I do have to take a picture.
Okay, so that would be the chipper there.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So crawl spaces, peeling, chipping paint, windows. We're supposed to test appliances. Any attached appliance, we're supposed to operate it.
Now
So-
attached, clarify that. So is that refrigerator or is that
Refrigerator, no.
Okay.
And your washer and dryer, no.
okay? So just your
so the
dishwasher,
appliances we
stove.
would typically convey.
Yes.
Stove, dishwasher, microwave if it's attached.
Yes.
Yeah.
And as far as working order, is that like
I turn them on.
okay?
And like I usually with a stove, I turn on all 4 burners, hold my hands over them to see
Feel
if
heat.
they turn on the inside of the stove, wait for a second. If I feel that heat kick on, then it's operational.
Okay.
I do not attest to the fact that it's going to cook your
Your
steak,
chicken or something.
Yeah.
but I'm at least like, hey, this functions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With air conditioning and heating, it's really hard when it's 100 degrees outside
Oh,
to
yeah.
be like, yeah, I'm going to turn on the heat now and
Yeah.
demonstrate that that's actually working.
Gotcha.
So usually, whichever one is in operation during that season, I can say, okay, this one's working. If it's spring or fall, I'll turn the other one on.
Okay.
Home inspectors have a lot of restrictions on that too, because you can actually mess up compressors if it's certain temperatures and you're starting to run air conditioning and it's too cold outside. So
Yes.
yeah,
And that's why the only inspections I do that for are FHA or USDA.
I gotcha.
I'm not a VA appraiser, so
Okay.
I really can't speak to that specifically.
Okay.
But there are, if it's not one of those that require me to turn those things on, I do not turn on your water other than to just say, okay, yeah,
It's running.
it's running. I'm not testing to see if the hot water kicks on. Because really that stuff is not my responsibility.
Gotcha.
If it has plumbing that's functional, then I would value it as any other home that has functional plumbing.
Gotcha.
gotcha.
So
Okay.
Huh. Wow. Okay. That's really cool because it's always a mystery
Yeah.
for both the homeowner, the potential buyer. You know, our spiel is always, look, an appraiser is looking for different things than a home inspector.
Correct.
The home inspector works for the buyer. The appraiser works for the lender. The appraiser is they're looking for the things the lender cares about primarily, which is going to have some overlap with the home inspector.
Correct.
But don't expect an appraiser to be, going around and testing to make sure all the electrical outlets work.
Right.
Right. Like a good home inspector would. So you guys do have some overlap, but that's good to hear. Like, okay, let's say I'm a seller. The appraiser's coming next Tuesday. I probably need to get the pool noodles out from under the house if it's a
Yep.
USDA or FHA loan. And here's the basic things that are going to be checked at that stage. How long are you typically in a homeowner's home?
I mean, yesterday I had a complicated home that was just under 4,000 square feet.
Okay.
It had a pool, had a carport, garage, sauna, screen porch, all these things, and it took me about an hour start
Okay.
to finish.
Okay.
I've been in, 13,000 square feet homes in Charlotte that took upwards of 2 hours.
Okay.
But for a 900 square foot apartment, condo type
Yeah.
style,
30 minutes, 15 minutes, you're out.
I could be out in 15 minutes. But I recognize that sellers kind of get alarmed if they see that behavior from me.
Yeah.
So I will try to take 30 minutes per property.
Okay.
Just so that somebody can't say, hey, you were in and out so fast, I didn't
Yeah.
even notice you were here.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
want them to know I'm there and
Yeah.
that I've taken copious notes.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, most of my information, once I've measured the house and gotten pictures of each room, I can tell from those pictures half the details I need. So I wouldn't even have to fill out my form while I'm at the property beyond getting a few key details.
Gotcha.
And then I'm pulling a lot of data online. That's the majority of what I do. So I spend, 30 to 45 minutes in a house usually.
Okay.
And then I spend another 3 to 6 hours in the office working on that report.
Gotcha.
Gotcha.
So a lot of people are like, well, he missed the value on this. It didn't make contract. I shouldn't say miss the value. I got a value. It just wasn't what you hoped it would be.
Right.
And he was only in here for 30 minutes. He must have missed something. Well, no, it's really the market is what takes the majority of my time to
Gotcha.
analyze. Once I get my details from the house, we're good.
Yeah.
Kind of the crunching the numbers sort of thing.
Yeah.
Takes a lot longer. Yeah.
It takes a lot longer.
And you mentioned about taking pictures. Of course, we've already gotten pictures that are on MLS, but you're coming through taking your own
Yes.
shots of the house
We don't take
on
ugly
the
pictures.
day.
We don't take the ugly pictures that they want.
Right. I mean, they want to get pictures of everything. And then you're also talking about measurement. So you're just making sure that what you have listed on MLS is roughly. I mean, it's not going to be to the square foot, but it's roughly what you're coming up with.
Yeah. I have to verify the dimensions of the home, and I have to measure to a specific standard called ANSI, ANSI. That's been a North Carolina standard for years, but it's only been nationally used for the last year.
Gotcha.
So there's still a lot of confusion out there as to what that looks like.
Okay.
And, you know, a lot of realtors are trained different ways for measuring. If it's a rainy day, you want to shoot your inside dimensions and just add a little bit for the outside wall. So that there can be some really strange square footage that comes up. I almost always find a variance between my measurements and what the home is listed at. And sometimes
Like pluses most of the time, or
pluses most of the time. The one I did yesterday, which was a large house, it was actually measured pretty well, and I still came in about 100 square feet larger than what it was listed at.
oh wow. So we're actually underestimating.
A lot of times.
Oh wow. Okay.
So
Which is hurting us.
That's wonderful news for us.
Yeah. Well, I know when I've measured houses, and I'll try to get the little box, the little square box that I can just use my multiplication, but it'll always have some little funky thing. And I've had multiple times where I measured something and said, this is not feeling right. And then I'll get one of you guys in, and you'll measure it again, and it actually adds a lot of value to the seller because it'll come in higher.
yes.
Which is really nice. I'm glad that we're not grossly overestimating square footages, and you're bringing us back to reality, but still, we're leaving stuff on the table for our sellers.
That's right.
If we're measuring a home, especially a complicated home, and we're losing 100, 150 square feet or something, I mean, that'd be horrible.
Honestly, it sounds like that we could probably, and we do this anyway, just as a pre-reference for everybody out there.
Oh, we've pretty much switched. I've lost all confidence in my own ability to measure a house.
We normally will hire somebody to do it. I think it's $75, $100, depending on who it is. But I mean, we saw that with one listing we had in Mebane, where we measured it, and then the guy came out. And we're like, we missed that by 100 square foot.
Yeah. Oh, and it was like 1,000 square foot home. I mean, it was a huge percentage of the square footage. So that's good to know. So all right, so you come out, you crunch all your numbers. What kind of time frame? Like, what's the maximum time frame that you're allowed? Because obviously certain properties are going to take you the max. So I'm not saying, hey, can you get it 24-hour turnaround? But like, if somebody's coming out, okay, the appraiser came on Tuesday, legally or whatever, I should be seeing a report by what?
So there's no, to my knowledge, there's no legal. It has to be in this time
Interesting.
frame.
Okay.
Most lenders or most of the AMCs.
Okay.
Send us two things that are almost contradictory. Number one, they insist that we do not give time frames.
Okay.
And then they insist that they have the report back within 2 business days after the date of inspection. So what that means is the appraiser is under a pretty tight time crunch.
Okay.
Some of the AMCs will begin deducting part of the fee if it takes longer.
Oh, wow.
I don't love that practice, but at the same time, the appraiser at least needs to be communicating with the AMC. Hey, I've run into this issue. Like sometimes in Alamance County, it's a few days before we get the septic permit back. That will actually influence how many bedrooms we can say it has.
Right.
Whether or not it has 4, it might only be able to be called a 2-bedroom. So we need to know that. Sometimes we're delayed with that. We can't help that. At which point we communicate to the AMC, hey, we're waiting on this. And then they impatiently send us an email every few hours being like, how about now?
Yeah.
Do you have it now? How about now?
Let me touch on that. So you said something about a septic thing. Is that something that the lender is pulling themselves?
I mean, ideally.
Okay. Because I know we're supposed to pull that. And,
sometimes we can track it down, sometimes we
can't. Yeah, depending on records.
Especially in this county.
Yes. It seems like it disappears sometimes.
Yeah.
But is that something that, like, for you guys, is the lender pulling that and then handing that over to you guys, or how's that work?
In an ideal scenario, the lender would hand us everything we need. That almost never happens.
Okay.
If we get the contract from the lender at the same time that we get the order, it's a pretty good day.
Okay.
So we usually have to pull a lot of those details ourselves.
Gotcha.
And then, depending on your county, maybe you find it, maybe you don't. Maybe they get rid of their records after 7 years.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of variables there, but one of the ways that a realtor can make it easy on me is if I get an email that says, hey, here's the well and septic permit, here's the permits for the repairs that were just made to this house. I probably would not provide the appraiser with the home inspection because you're probably making him aware of more than
he needs to
would
be.
See.
Yeah.
I don't want to know that, the coil is rotted out on the AC unit. Like, I don't even know how to adjust for that. But if you want to be like, hey, we're aware of this thing and this is going to be taken care of at this point, the appraiser does have a better idea. Okay, I can make this report subject to that being completed.
Oh, okay.
And provide a more realistic value.
Correct.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Correct.
Otherwise, you guys are having to lowball something because of the not being sure.
Correct.
Is this getting handled? Is it not? Yeah.
And different AMCs require us to do either our report, like some will say, you've got to do this report as is, as of the day you see it.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So if this change is going to take place next week, can't do anything about it.
Gotcha. I know we're getting long on this one, so we're probably going to wrap it up. But one last question would be, like you're saying, let's say that you have a house that is on septic, and of course you have houses that are in the city, so the city, of course, can contribute to whatever the bedroom count is. Two questions. On a city count, what is it that classifies it as a bedroom? And then on a septic, what is it? Like if you can't find the report, does that hinder you being able to make it better? Or is it like, well, we're assuming or so forth? So those two kind of questions,
Yeah. The easier part of that, if I cannot find the septic report and I know it's on a septic tank, I put a statement in my appraisal saying the appraiser couldn't find this piece of information. Therefore, the appraiser makes an extraordinary assumption that this property has a septic tank that can accommodate the number of bedrooms that are present.
Gotcha.
And I did that a couple years ago with a property in Haw River that had been remodeled. The agent themselves disclosed that in the listing, hey, we don't know what the septic's capacity is. There's no report according to the county. And then later the homeowner got it tested and discovered that she bought a 4-bedroom house that had a 3-bedroom capacity septic. So she called me and she was like, what does this do to my value? And I could tell from the tone of her voice, she wanted to sue somebody.
Yeah.
I was like, well, thankfully, I disclosed this in my report and the realtor disclosed this in the listing. She knew it when she bought it, so she couldn't really sue anybody over it successfully. So all that to say, if I can't find it, I just make an assumption that it is what it is.
Okay.
Because in all honesty, I don't know that it makes a huge difference in our market if somebody's like, yeah, it may not have the septic for this bedroom, but I'm still going to use it as a bedroom. So as for what constitutes a bedroom, it's a little bit of a nebulous definition, and I would probably use the term market expectation.
Gotcha.
And I'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
The first thing it has to have is ingress and egress. You've got a way to get into it from inside the house and a way to get out of it to outside of the house. So that means a window or another door to the outside. And then closets, there's a market expectation for most homes that there should be a closet. However, that's not a hard and fast rule. We've got properties in Alamance County, like older homes that are more than 100 years old that were built without a closet in the bedrooms because that was not a market expectation at that time.
Yeah.
They expected they'd bring in an armoire. We've got communities like that here where every house in the neighborhood has 0 closets, or maybe they've got one and it's downstairs in the living room.
Gotcha.
And that's for the broom. So it doesn't necessarily disqualify it from being a bedroom if it doesn't have a closet. However, if you're talking about a subdivision home that's like 5 years old, there's a market expectation that it has a closet and that it has a fairly big closet. It's not just 2 by 2 in the corner. It needs to be big enough for you to put your clothes in.
Something that we didn't create to make it a bedroom.
Correct.
Yeah.
So the other thing that you have to have, or rather that you should not be passing through this room to get to any other room. If it's, especially on these older homes, sometimes you've got the bedroom that you have to walk through to get to the second bedroom. Well, then that first bedroom can't be called a bedroom. So.
And similarly, if you're walking through to get to the bathroom if it's the only bathroom in the house?
Correct. If it's the only bathroom in the house, which some of these older homes have that set up where the agent might list it as the primary bedroom and bathroom. Well, because you have to walk through that bedroom to get to the only bathroom, that means that there's not an expectation of privacy in that room. So most of the time that would not be counted as a bedroom. And then you wind up with like a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house that actually is a 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom house with a bonus, maybe even with a closet.
Wow. Dang.
Ouch.
I know that's going to be a...
Yeah, we're going to run into that one day.
Yes, we will.
Okay, all right, so we've got a million questions. Thankfully, we're getting Amos back on. This is going to be a series because we've got really a lot of things we wanted to dig into with him. So stay tuned, and we'll drop another episode next week. And so, yes, thanks for being on.
Yep.
Yes.
And we look forward to the next conversation here. And then whatever you do to end these videos.
Yeah, guys, if you will, go ahead and subscribe to our channel. If you can leave us a comment down below. And if you can just like this or share it with somebody who needs information on this topic, that would be great. So we'll see you guys in the next video.
All right, see ya.